Should you buy an aquarium temperature controller? What do they do and what do they help us with? Well, the good folks at INKBIRD sent me their new ITC-306A temperature controller free of charge to review for you. Here's why you might want to consider it coming up right now. Folks, if you keep tropical fish, and if you're like me and a lot of us in the hobby, we rely a lot on our heaters to maintain the temperature in our tanks. We set the thermostat, expecting that's going to keep a stable temperature, and for the most part, they work just fine, with some brands better than others. Our first line of defense is our thermometer. We check the temperature, we go back and make sure our heater is functioning properly, see if the light's on, and if you're like me, we see that the light's on and everything is good, the temperature's stable, no problems. But what happens if the heater malfunctions? Now, if you've been in the hobby long enough, or even if you're just getting into the hobby, you've likely heard of people talking about disaster stories from their heaters malfunctioning, cooking their fish, severely stressing them, even killing them off, or situations where the heater stops heating, causing the tank too cold. That stresses the fish, opens up the potential for disease. There are also stories about heaters electrocuting fish, and often the first sign of a heater malfunction is fish stressed, gasping at the surface for air, or God forbid, a horrible situation where our fish are cooked and we see a lot of dead fish in our tanks. Now, even the king of DIY, Joey Mullen himself, has a video where he tells the story about how a heater malfunction in his Cobalt heater killed several of his stingrays, all worth thousands of dollars. And that video is up on his channel. So how can we protect a heater from a malfunction or have an early warning system when a heater begins to fail? Well, that is where the temperature controllers come into play. Aquarium temperature controllers can prevent heater malfunction, and they serve as an early warning sign that your heater is not working correctly. Now, that's a much better early warning system than finding fish dead in our tank because they were cooked, or severely stressed because a heater's not working or is heating too much. Now, here's INKBIRD's website. You can visit them at www.inkbird.com. This is their ITC-306A aquarium temperature controller. Big company, they make a variety of products. Of course, we're just going to focus on the temperature controller today. Let's get it unboxed and see what we have. Of course, you have a 12-month warranty card, always nice to have. And I believe INKBIRD may be sending a promo code for anybody interested in purchasing or considering this temperature controller. If so, I'll put that in the description right up front. The first thing I noticed after unboxing it, it is built well. It doesn't feel cheap, feels nice in your hands, and the two temperature probes are encased in plastic. Well, this is a much better upgrade than old temperature controllers that had metal probes. Those metal probes would often corrode, wasn't good in the tank, so they are encased in plastic. You get two suction cups to attach those onto your tank, and then of course you have your outlets to plug in your heater. Now, I thought what was really nice is there are a variety of different outlets on the ITC-306A. Depending on the country you live in, they'll send you the correct temperature controller with the correct outlets. And being in the United States, they certainly sent me the correct outlets here, and I thought that was a nice accommodation that they offer them to so many different countries. So how does the INKBIRD controller work? Well, the one thing I did like is you'll see just how long the cords are for the temperature probes, meaning if you have a 150-gallon tank, maybe it's a really long tank, you've got plenty of room to put one probe on one side of the tank, one probe on the other, or if you have a very tall tank or it's on a tall stand, you've got plenty of cord to work with. And what I did is I put on the right-hand side, I suction cupped one probe over on the right, and I suction cupped one probe over on the left. Now, it's about 2.5 inches from the substrate, about 1.5 inches from the right side of the tank, and I tried to match those up as well as I could equally in the tank, one on the right-hand side and one on the left-hand side. The one on the left is a little bit harder to see, but I tried to match them up just so they were about even as best I could. Again, about 2 inches above the substrate, 1.5 inches away from the right or left side of the tank. No problem with the cords. They just fit right under my aquarium lid and down around the back of the tank. So pretty easy setup with the probes. And once I got the probes set up, I plugged the heater into the outlet of the temperature controller, and everything got up and running just fine. Now, what you'll see here is on the top, that is the current temperature of your tank. Down below is the desired temperature. We'll get to that later, because I want to first show you one of the biggest advantages of having a temperature controller in protecting your tank from getting too hot. Now remember, this tank right now is 78.4 degrees. there is an AH feature. This is the alarm high function. You can set a temperature you don't want the tank to get to. If it gets that high, the controller will sound an alarm and it'll shut the heat off. Now remember, the tank is 78.4 right now. What I'm going to do is bring this all the way down below that so the alarm will go off. I'm going to set this to 75 degrees and set it. And here's what you'll hear. So you're hearing the alarm. Now this controller's telling me that the aquarium is too hot. It's hotter than I want it. I get an alert on my phone, which also I figured out a few hours later showed up on the front of my phone as well. This is Wi-Fi. You do get notifications on your phone, but this is one of the major advantages. If you don't want your tank getting too hot, I don't want mine going over 82. If it does, the alarm will not only sound, but even if I'm at work 9-10 miles away, it's going to bring up a notification on my phone, or I'm going to hear the alarm in the house. So that's one of the main features. If you didn't have the temperature controller to protect you and your heater malfunctioned and it kept heating the tank, that's where we get into situations where it can cook our fish. We certainly don't want that. Now I want to show you another advantage of this temperature controller is potentially it has the ability to make your heater last longer. Why? Well, it takes a lot of the load off your heater in regulating its own thermostat, having to turn that on and off, and it transfers it to the temperature controller. The current tank temp 78.4, the desired temperature is 78.5 underneath, and that little work button that's not on at the time, that means the controller right now is not trying to heat the aquarium. It's bringing it up to the desired temperature slowly. You'll also see that the heater's turned off. That little red work light is also off. But I want to show you that the heater thermostat here is set to 82. A little experiment I did, it's just above 82, but the controller is not allowing the tank to get up to 82 because the desired temp that I have programmed into the controller is 78.5. Now I did play with that a little bit, so you'll see a little bit different temperature readings here, but it's not going to let the tank get to 82. My desired temp's on the bottom, 78.5, and you'll see 78.4 on the app, on the Wi-Fi matches. So the temperature controller takes a lot of the load off your heater in having to regulate its own thermostat, and the controller does that for the heater. Now you'll see that little work light is on and the heater light is on, and I changed the temperatures a little bit, just doing some experiments. I want it to get to 78.8, it's at 78.6. So it's heating the aquarium, the little work light is on, and the heater light is on. Now TS1, you set that for your desired temperature. TS2 is when you want the heater to come on, so there's only a couple degrees of difference there. It keeps a really stable temperature. Alarm high, we talked about this before. This is, I don't want my tank getting to that heat. You also have an alarm low function. So if your heater were to stop working and the tank gets too cold, this will also sound an alarm. I don't want mine at this point, I played with this a little bit, getting any lower than 70 degrees. I want an alarm to go off. CT is continuous heating. This is where you're telling the temperature controller, in order to reach my desired temperature, go ahead and run the heater for 2 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. Now, it's been really cold here at night. Originally, I'd set this to 2 hours, but my heater has to run 6 to 7 hours at night to maintain temperature because it's been so cold. It gave me a continuous heating alarm that I saw in the morning. Again, I was still experimenting with this, so I shouldn't have set this to 2. If it's really cold, at night especially, and you know your heater has to run 6 to 8 hours, I would set this to 6 or 8 hours. Otherwise, if you have it set to 1 or 2 hours, it's going to set an alarm and it's going to turn off your heater. So play with that a little bit. This is a temperature calibration area. We're going to skip over that for right now. And then, of course, on the controller, you can control whether you want Celsius or Fahrenheit for your temperature. And once you have everything set, you hold down the settings button to save all of your settings, and you'll see the original display come up. Again, this is heating right now. The little work button is on and the heater light is on in the back. So is this temperature controller worth considering? Absolutely. It gives you a lot of protection against heater malfunction. Whether you have very expensive fish or just fish you've had a long time and they're very sentimental, it can help save them from too much heat or colder temperatures, or from you losing them from a heater malfunction. With 2 external probes, it's more accurate getting the temperature. Your heater only has 1 internal probe and really only gets the temperature around the heater, and it can help your heaters last longer. Now, a few considerations. The instructions were a little bit hard to interpret. I had to read them several times and play around with the heater, so they could be written a little more step by step. That's fine. The Wi-Fi only works on a 2.4 gigahertz router. I do have a 2. I also have a 5, but I run most everything on a 5. I'd like to see that work on a 5 gigahertz router. But like many Wi-Fi devices, if privacy is a concern, you certainly don't have to connect to Wi-Fi. So I just want to let you know that you do have to connect this to your router. If you do want the app, it works great, but just like any Wi-Fi devices, if privacy is a concern, the controller works just fine on its own without the Wi-Fi. So that is the INKBIRD ITC-306A temperature controller. I want to thank the good folks at INKBIRD for sending this over to me free of charge and letting me do this review. I love it. I have it on my 36-gallon bowfront tank. Certainly a controller worth considering. Folks, we're still taking submissions. We need a couple more for episode 2 of Show Us Your Tanks. Simply send an email to dmichaelsfishden@gmail.com. Send in a picture or video of your tank, a description, how long you've been in the hobby, what kind of fish you're keeping, really anything you'd like to tell us. Let us know your YouTube name or YouTube handle, and we'll feature you in the next episode of Show Us Your Tanks. Folks, as always, please like, comment, subscribe for future content, and thanks for watching.